This land has very aptly been called Between the Forks of the Cypress. The land itself, before we think of the people and the places, the land, the streams, the rivers, the forest and hills. We overlay the present political boundaries for orientation and see that the two forks of the Cypress come together near Jefferson, Texas, then flow through Caddo Lake and join the Red River near Shreveport, Louisiana. The Red River then becomes a major tributary of the Mississippi and flows into the Gulf of Mexico. We are concerned today with that little bit of land between the forks of the Cypress. The first people of whom we have record living between the forks of the Cypress we call the Caddo Indians. You note their homeland outlined on this map. Archaeologists have discovered many sites of villages and burial places of the Caddo Indians between the forks of the Cypress. And this particular culture is known as the Titus phase. The Caddo people lived in established villages in large dome-shaped houses. They cultivated crops of corn, sunflowers, squash, melons, and beans. They also hunted and fished along the streams. Deer and small game were plentiful. They made beautiful clay vessels in a great variety of patterns, many of which have been discovered and are still preserved to this day. The pleasant life of the Caddo Indians had been long disturbed before the first permanent settlers, of whom we have record, moved here from western Tennessee in the 1850s. This is the home of one of those settlers, James Harvey Armstrong. The home of James Harvey Armstrong was built before the Civil War on an old Indian trail called the Caddo Trace, which corresponds closely to the present Main Street in the town of Ore City. This is the family of William Wesley Williamson of the neighboring community of Coffeyville. Ed Williamson is on the left, and John Wesley Williamson and Wig Williamson are on the right. A group of young people in the late 1800s from the neighboring communities of Coffeyville and Murray League. Among the young people who are pictured here are familiar names Joe Spratt, Wig and John Williamson, and Lula Armstrong. Lula Armstrong became the wife of John Wesley Williamson. She was the daughter of James Harvey Armstrong and had been born in the old Armstrong home. The Williamsons began their life together in the old Armstrong home on the Armstrong farm. This formal portrait of John Wesley Williamson must have been taken near the time of his marriage. About 10 years after the marriage of John Williamson and Lula Armstrong, construction began on the Port Bolivar and Iron Ore Railroad. A town site was laid out over the old Armstrong farm by a company called the Ore City Development Company. The old Armstrong home was torn down and material used in construction of other buildings. A new home was built for John Wesley and Lula Williamson on this corner in a residential area of the new town. The site of the Williamson House is now the northwest corner of the intersection of US 259 and Main Street. And this is the post office of the new town of Ore City, Texas. A view down the storefronts of some of the original buildings in the town site of Ore City. Another view of the same buildings from the opposite direction. Note the unpaved streets, which would have been true of the entire town at that time. A school district was formed and a new building was constructed soon after the establishment of the city. One of the sons of John Williamson and Lula Armstrong, shown at his home in the 1940s. Typically dressed children in front of a picket fence and a plow: Sue Williamson, David Williamson, and Hal Burford Newsom. Two Orsidians born the night of October 16 and 17 in the year 1932. The same two friends on either side of another friend with whom they seem to be holding hands. But after all, he's from Coffeyville and may be somewhat frightened. Four descendants of the original settlers of Murray League go back to the old home country in western Tennessee, all descendants of the Coppage family of Danceyville, Tennessee: David Williamson, Conrad Coppage, Frank Brazil, and Robert Newsom. A Google Eye view of our town and the surrounding area. You can see on the right Lake of the Pines and the highway intersecting the city, US 259, and in the distance, the Texas Highway 155. And a closer overhead shot taken from Google Earth of the city streets of our town, Ore City, Texas, USA.